Hey everyone, the internet's busiest music nerd here. Just getting to the point on this one. So I listened to every album Anthony Fantano listened to this year. It was a terrible idea. Everything from January 1st to October 31st, 150 albums with a few exceptions. These are a few exceptions. I went into this with grand illusions of doing a supercut, me reacting each one of his reviews, having listened to the album, breaking down his analysis, but truthfully, I just don't have the time to do that. See, my full-time job is unfortunately not reviewing music, and I'm just a bit too perfectionist to make sure that video would ever actually come out. And on top of all that, it is just so much music. But damn it, I did all the upfront work, I listened to all 150 of these albums, a lot of which I probably would have never listened to, being honest. Like, we have some overlapping tastes, but not fully, so I listened to a bunch of stuff that frankly I didn't want to. I'm gonna make a video. I have to make a video at this point. Sunk cost fallacy be damned. And I did have a conceit that I thought would carry me, which was going to break down how good of a reviewer I actually thought Anthony Fantano was, but I think that was a fool's errand. Because unfortunately, from a technical aspect, it's just too evident that he's good at his job. Very consistent upload schedule and output, very well-spoken, verbose, articulate analysis, and generally covers a wide range of genres and topics to the point where he's got all the fundamentals covered. But the more I drilled down into all these albums that I only half wanted to listen to, the more of a question kept nagging me. Is Anthony Fantano a good tastemaker? I get it, he's partially at the whims of what fans request, whatever's popular, whatever's going to actually pay the bills for him. But some of the stuff he's surfacing, man, here, let's kick it over to the grid real quick. I'll swap corners here so you can see the whole thing, but if you take a look, like Morgan Wallen, Ken Carson, The Carter 6, Central C, Arcade Fire, Young Thug. A lot of stinkers is all I'm saying. So you gotta ask yourself, to an audience of hundreds of thousands of people, is he really surfacing more diamonds in the rough or just general slop? Well, today hopefully we're gonna answer that in my review of every Anthony Fantano review. So first things first, to do this analysis, I had to go ahead and score 150 albums. And here's where we ended up with that. So, myself in green, Fantano in blue. All our 150 scores, on average, I was slightly more negative with a 5.84 to Fantano's 6.38 average rating, which I think makes sense. I mean, obviously, Fantano picked all these albums. I did not pick these albums, so he might be curating to his own taste more than he's curating to mine. Fair enough. And then just a quick visualization of our differences on opinion here. Obviously, he was a half point more positive. Yellow is here on the graph, the albums we agreed perfectly on. Green are albums I think he sort of undersold the greatness of. And then red, I would say, are albums he oversold the importance of. So looking at what he most oversold here, obviously we have The Hives and then The Weeknd, two records which I just didn't really care for a ton, not too many discrete thoughts outside of that. The Juiced record, which my American mind simply could not comprehend. And then this Cheek Face record, where I just did not care for the lead vocalist and how his voice sounded at all. Then in terms of the records he undersold, or the ones I think he did pretty dirty, it looks like he really had it out for my girls this year. I mean, Addison Rae, Yule, OK Lou, pretty excellent all-pop records. And then this Royal Otis record, I really didn't have any thoughts on. I thought it was just sort of a pleasant wallpapery listen, but Fantano took some strong offense to it. I mean, a 1 is harsh. So this helped me glean that, okay, I'm generally more negative on this crop of albums Fantano presented, and these are our biggest outliers. Then I wanted to drill down to that next level, sort of a overview of each album on a case-by-case. Welcome to the alignment curve. I am the y-axis, my scores, Fantano is the x-axis, his scores. We plotted every album. This is that curve fully populated, so all 150 albums. Keep in mind that they're not points, these are large, or semi-large pixel images, so they're not actually perfectly aligned to these axes, but it's a good enough approximation. I think we might find it helpful to go rating by rating just to get a better sense of the general trends. Starting with my 1s, you can see here that all of my 1s he generally agrees are not very good albums. My 2s, not many of them, you can clearly see that Cheek Face album he loves a lot more than I do. And then the 3s were pretty well centered again on agreement that not very good records for the most part. So now the 4s, it gets a little bit interesting. You can see Fantano has this cluster of albums that I truthfully did not care for. Some over here where I just maybe was a little less negative than he was. And then the 5s, again, pretty well centered around sort of the expected value of a 5. As I mentioned, Fantano was slightly more positive. Maybe I was just a little burnt out on listening to some of these records I never planned to listen to. But I think these are pretty well approximated. So then very interestingly, for the 6s, the 7s, and the 8s, we're pretty well bunched up around those expected values of 6, 7, and 8, minus the ones we already covered, the Addison Rae, OK Lou, and etc. As for my 9s, Fantano gave them all high scores, which I like to feel validated by, except for the Yule record, of course, which I do think he's hating on. And then very interestingly, out of the subset of 150 albums, we both agree there's only 110, with him giving the nod to the Clips record, and then me giving it to the Black Country New Road album that came out this year. But where I think this graph shines is almost looking at it more of a map, so to speak. I mean, you have these different regions, these different sort of colonies that form. Down here in yellow, quite evidently, this would be Fantano core, just based on how the graph is designed. But you have the sort of artists you would expect in here, like Jid, FKA Twigs, Bon Iver, those sort of types. But then if we hop over to the other side of my line of best fit here, you'll notice in this pink circle, a lot of female artists that I like that Fantano didn't. I'm not trying to suggest anything, but Lambrini Girls, Wednesday, as I mentioned, Addison Rae, Yule, Big Thief, all of these female vocalists, hates the neat girls Tano. Something to think about. Now, obviously, I'm just joking around. I don't think he's a misogynist or anything. But I do think it's funny that the exact middle point between Fantano core and misogyny is Rate Your Music core. I don't know if that speaks to anything, but if you look at the albums in here, I mean, Deftones, Weather Day, does it fit the bill? You tell me. And if we keep following that trend line down, I think it's really funny that right beneath that, you have your performative males. I mean, we got Tu Hollis, Leve, Mac DeMarco. Really funny trajectory. And then if we reach across the aisle, everybody agrees at the very bottom of this all is Trap Paradise. I mean, the frat boys, this is what they're listening to, and we all agree that it's stagnant as hell and has gotta go. Now, all of those groups were just for the fun of it, but the group I'm really interested in is what are the niche albums Fantano has to review. I sort of look at it as having three main categories. Like, obviously there's the necessities, the albums he just has to review. You can't skip Taylor Swift, you can't skip the new Clips album, people want to see those reviews. And then you have, I would say, the bubbling under, the buzzing albums, you know, like Geese is a great example. You kind of have to see what the new hotness, what's going big in the critical circles is. But then the niche albums, the ones that, like, no one really was asking for the review. Like, maybe you're happy to see it, but it wasn't highly requested in the comments. He could have gotten away with not reviewing these albums. Those are the ones I'm interested in. So, I mean, pretty arbitrarily, just on my own subjective opinion, I went through and I narrowed down from a field of 150 to 50 what I consider to be the niche picks. The albums that really would have flown under the radar had he not brought them to the attention of, you know, the average watcher, someone who's not really deep in the forums, deep in the Spotify algorithm looking for new things, stuff that a lot of people would have missed had he not surfaced it for them. And I'm happy to say that of the 50, the score went up. My average score went up from 5.84 to 6.16. So what we're seeing here is that the ones that he has to rate out of necessity, those albums like the Morgan Wallens where enough people are listening to them in the general populace, are the ones that are actually bogging down the quality of what he's reviewing. I'm happy to see that what he gets that more hand select, what's not really forced upon him by his viewing public or just the general music world at large, is actually curated with a finer tooth comb. So congratulations, Anthony Fantano, because the question I set out to answer at the start of this video, are you a good tastemaker? I would say with a light to decent yes. Yes, in fact, you are. When given the opportunity to pick an album that's not generally influenced by the populace, more dictated by your own personal preferences, I think you're doing a good job. Good on you for that. As I mentioned at the start of the video, Fantano's good for some clear and cogent analysis. In terms of music criticism, he's really the one-stop shop, at least for my generation. There's really nowhere else to go besides forums like Album of the Year, Rate Your Music. If you want music discourse, Fantano's doing a pretty good job at cultivating that for you with his online presence. But getting into some lessons learned, having gone through all of these numerous albums. First thing on my mind, should you do this? No. Don't. This was a terrible idea. I cannot emphasize enough how much you should not do this to yourself. It's not fun. The last thing you want to do to something that should be a pastime, something that should put you at ease, you know, a hobby you enjoy while listening to music, is turn that into a chore. This became a chore quickly, from the start, the whole way through. Of everything I looked at through the self-imposed challenge of copying Fantano's listening habits for a year, I clocked around 45 albums, we'll say, that just either weren't on my radar, were on my radar but I wasn't interested in, or for any other general reason I just wasn't going to listen to. Of those 45, I would say these 4 next to me right now are the only ones that are an 8 and up, which is already not great. So when I say Fantano is a good tastemaker, I don't mean for someone like me. When the year is all said and done, I'm going to have listened to over 500 albums that are new to me every year. Not necessarily all released this year, but that's a lot of music. I don't really need someone like Fantano to curate my listening habits for me, because I am active enough in that role that I've got it all figured out. So if you're someone like me who is very actively listening to music, searching for new music, trying new things, experimenting with your listening habits, you really don't need someone like Fantano because you got yourself. So my general recommendation for everybody, no matter your listening habits, would be to use Fantano as a guideline. Someone where like I was already sort of interested in that. Use that video, use that thumbnail of him smiling, of him cheesing, of him saying a goofy Tano in the intro. Use that as your motivation to take the plunge on something you were kind of teetering on. You're not going to force yourself to be interested in something you're not interested in. If Fantano's reviewing a lot of rage music and you don't like rage, he's probably not going to sway you just by being very eloquent in his description of that project. If you listen to a lot of country and Fantano's reviewing a country album you've never heard, or maybe something adjacent, maybe a singer-songwriter record or something folksy, something Americana, you should take that plunge. That's what Fantano is really good for, is taking the network you have already built out in your listening habits and just putting adjacent nodes down that you may or may not jump to. You shouldn't jump all the way across the map, but use them as a tool. Use them as you would use any other sort of music listening supplement, like Last.fm. It's all supplemental, What I offer, what Anthony Fantano offers, music publications, forums, algorithms, playlisters, it's all supplemental to one core tenet, and that's believing in yourself and what you like. It's good to challenge yourself to broaden your horizons using these extra resources, but at the end of the day, you know yourself, you know the lived-in experience that you have that is unique to you, and your music taste is going to reflect that. It won't perfectly match anyone else, but they can offer guidance or just a different perspective that you didn't know you needed. But with that, I think that's all I have for you today. So, thank you for watching. I know this isn't the most focused or well put together analysis of all time. It's not very well researched, a lot of the numbers are shammed together, but I did put in a lot of work up front, just listening to all of this, getting a lot of perspective from Fantano's reviews, and reflecting that against my own opinions. It was a lot of effort, and I just wanted to put something out there, not focus too much on making it perfect, but making it me, so I hope that came across pretty well. At the very least, I hope this offered up some unique perspectives that you can use moving forward on how you interface with music and what it means to interface with other people's music and opinions. And with that, I hope you stick around. I'm going to have my best albums of the year video coming out some point in December. Don't know exactly when, but that will be coming. And then from there, who knows what I'll make. But until then, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do, just go do it. And take care.